spilled coffee, a borrowed jacket, one teasing line that changed everything. Looks like you owe me a smile. He didn't know that simple moment would blur every line between kindness and something far deeper, something neither of them were supposed to feel. It started with a sound, the sharp clink of porcelain meeting marble, followed by a soft gasp. Coffee splashed across the small cafe table, a sudden burst of brown against white, and onto the sleeve of the woman sitting across from him. He reacted before he thought. "Oh, I'm so sorry," he blurted, grabbing napkins from the counter and leaning forward, half laughing, half panicking. She blinked, startled but composed, the kind of woman who didn't seem easily rattled. Elegant in a cream sweater, hair tied neatly, lips painted in a quiet shade of rose. "It's all right," she said quickly, though her tone wavered between politeness and surprise. Her fingers trembled as she dabbed at the spill. He noticed the faint scent of jasmine and something warmer, maybe her perfume, maybe the coffee itself mixing into it. "Here," he said, shrugging off his jacket without thinking. "You'll stain it worse if it dries." He leaned forward and placed it gently around her shoulders. She froze for a second, caught off guard by the unexpected gesture, then smiled faintly as the fabric settled over her. The jacket was still warm from his body, soft, carrying that faint trace of rain and detergent, the simple scent of someone kind. She looked up, eyes meeting his dark brown, calm, with a quiet steadiness that seemed to both challenge and reassure him. "You didn't have to." He cut her off with a small smile, the kind that played at the corners rather than the lips. "Looks like you owe me a smile now." The words came out lighter than he expected, almost teasing, but the air between them shifted. She blinked, a soft breath leaving her as though the world had just tilted slightly. Then she laughed, a small, genuine sound that didn't quite reach full confidence, like she hadn't laughed that freely in a long time. "There," she said, voice quiet but amused. "Debt paid." He smiled back, but something about her laugh lingered. It wasn't just beautiful, it was real, a little hesitant, like it had been waiting for the right reason to come out again. For a few seconds they just sat there, caught in that small, suspended moment. Strangers wrapped in the same silence, connected by an accident that suddenly felt like fate playing softly in the background. Outside, the city kept moving, footsteps, passing cars, the low hum of late evening chatter. But inside, time felt slower. She adjusted the jacket around her shoulders and gave a small, self-conscious sigh. "I guess I owe you more than a smile now," she murmured. He leaned back slightly, still watching her, tone gentle but sure. "I'll keep the tab open then." The corner of her mouth curved again, a silent invitation he didn't expect to earn so soon. And though neither of them said it aloud, they both felt it. That strange, unexplainable pull between two people who shouldn't have met, but somehow did. The spilled drink had started something that neither of them was ready to name. She could have left after that. After the coffee, the apology, and that line that made her smile despite herself. Most people would have. But instead, she lingered. Maybe it was the comfort of the jacket around her shoulders, or maybe it was the rare feeling of being seen without judgment. When he stood to leave, she caught herself speaking first. "Wait," she said, fingers curling lightly around the sleeve of his jacket before she realized what she was doing. "At least let me buy you another coffee. It's the least I can do after all this." He hesitated, surprised by the soft insistence in her tone. Then he smiled, that same calm, almost disarming smile, and nodded. "Only if you'll sit with me." And so they did. Two strangers, opposite each other, across a small table marked by the faint stain of their meeting. The cafe had quieted now. The crowd had thinned, leaving only the sound of rain starting up outside and the low hum of the espresso machine. At first, their conversation was light, safe. She asked what he did. He gave vague answers, something about design work, late nights, and coffee-fueled deadlines. He asked about her favorite books, and she surprised him by mentioning one he'd never heard of. An old romance novel, she said, felt too honest to be fiction. She spoke with ease, but he noticed the pauses, the moments when her voice softened and her eyes shifted, as if she were measuring how much of herself to reveal. "You talk like you write poetry," he said suddenly. That drew a quiet laugh from her. "I used to," she admitted. "Stopped when life got too real. Maybe that's when it matters most," he replied, tone simple, not trying to sound wise, just true. She looked at him for a long moment then, like she wasn't expecting someone half her age to understand something she'd buried years ago. Her eyes softened, and something in her chest eased. They talked for what felt like hours, though time never announced its passing. The conversation drifted from books to travel to little confessions, the kind you don't mean to share but somehow do when the person across from you feels safe. At one point, she reached to move her cup, and their fingers brushed. It was nothing, a small, fleeting touch, but both felt it. Her hand lingered a second too long before she pulled away, the faintest color rising to her cheeks. He smiled gently, sensing the hesitation, but said nothing. When the rain grew heavier outside, she sighed. "I should go," she murmured, though she didn't move. He looked at her, really looked. "You don't have to, not yet." Something about the way he said it, calm, not pleading, just open, made her pause. She glanced toward the window, then back at him. "You're very sure of yourself," she said, half teasing. "Not at all," he replied. "I just know when something feels right." Her lips parted as if to answer, but instead she smiled. That same quiet, unguarded smile he'd asked for earlier. And just like that, the world outside blurred into the sound of rain, and two people who shouldn't have had anything to say to each other found everything they didn't know they were missing. By the time they stepped outside, the rain had become a soft curtain, steady silver streaks falling beneath the cafe's yellow light. The air smelled of wet pavement and brewed coffee, that tender kind of freshness that makes the night feel alive. She paused just under the awning, hesitating. Her hands tucked into his jacket, still draped over her shoulders. "You'll get cold," she said softly, half turning toward him. He smiled, shaking his head. "It looks better on you." The words came easily, but the silence that followed didn't. She glanced at him, eyes narrowing slightly, unsure whether he was teasing or being sincere. He wasn't sure either, he only knew it felt true. A car splashed past, scattering water across the street. She flinched slightly and laughed at herself, that same low laugh that always started hesitant and ended warm. He caught himself watching her too long, memorizing the way she brushed a strand of damp hair from her forehead. The faint glimmer of rain caught in it. "Do you walk?" he asked suddenly, breaking the silence. "I was going to take a cab," she said, then hesitated. "But maybe a walk would be nice." He extended his arm slightly, not touching her yet, just offering space beneath the jacket. An invitation without a word. She looked at him again, her eyes softening before she nodded. "All right then," she murmured. They walked slowly under the shared cover, the jacket stretching across both their shoulders. It wasn't perfect. Every few steps their arms brushed, their rhythm adjusting to each other's. But somehow that small closeness felt perfect enough. Rain tapped against the ground like music, a rhythm that filled the silence between them. Neither spoke much, words felt unnecessary. She watched the city lights shimmer through puddles. He watched her watch them, the faint reflection of neon and gold catching in her eyes. "You're quiet," she said at last. He smiled. "I don't want to interrupt the rain." She turned her head slightly, her cheek nearly brushing his shoulder. "You make it sound like it's talking to you." "Maybe it is," he replied softly. "Maybe it's saying not to rush this moment." She blinked, caught off guard again. Not by the words, but by the gentleness in them. Her steps slowed. For a second, their shoulders pressed fully together under the jacket. She didn't move away. The world around them blurred, cars, laughter from across the street, even the cool wind, all distant, softened by the sound of falling rain. "Do you ever feel like you're in the wrong place at the right time?" she asked quietly, as if confessing to the night itself. He glanced at her, voice low. "Only when I'm with you." Her breath caught. She didn't answer, just looked forward again, lips curving in a quiet, helpless smile that he couldn't see. but could somehow feel. When they reached the corner, she stopped. "This is me," she said. "Thank you for walking." He nodded, reluctant but respectful. "You'll return the jacket?" "Maybe," she said, eyes playful now. "Depends if you ask nicely next time." The rain kept falling. She stepped away, the space between them suddenly too wide. And as he watched her disappear into the soft glow of the city, he realized the night had changed him. Not loudly, not clearly, but enough that the sound of rain would never feel the same again. The next few days felt strangely hollow. The cafe still smelled of roasted beans and rain-soaked jackets. But without her there, it seemed quieter, emptier somehow. He caught himself glancing at the corner table every time he walked in, half expecting to see her waiting with that soft, cautious smile. But she didn't come. He tried to convince himself it had been just one of those fleeting things. A nice evening, a passing connection. Yet her voice kept replaying in his mind. Maybe a walk would be nice. The way she said it had lingered, hesitant, hopeful, like she'd wanted it to mean more. On the fourth day, he went back at the same hour, coffee in hand, pretending to read something on his phone. When the door finally opened and she stepped in, his pulse betrayed him. She looked effortlessly composed again, hair tied, long coat draped over her shoulders, the faintest trace of red lipstick. But when her eyes met his, there was the smallest flicker of surprise. And then something else. Relief, maybe. He stood before he could stop himself. "Didn't think I'd see you again," he said, tone casual though his heart disagreed. She smiled, a polite one this time, not the real one. "I wasn't sure I'd come." "Why not?" She exhaled softly, setting her purse down on the table. "Because this," she gestured between them, "feels like something I shouldn't be doing." He frowned slightly. "Talking. Wanting to," she corrected gently. Her honesty disarmed him. It always did. The silence that followed was thick. Not awkward, but heavy with everything unspoken. The soft hum of the cafe filled it. Spoons stirring, cups clinking, conversations murmuring. Yet around their table it felt like none of that existed. He leaned back, studying her. "If it feels wrong, why are you here?" She looked down at her hands, fingers tracing the rim of her cup. "Because it doesn't feel wrong when I am." That sentence landed somewhere deep. His throat tightened. Words came slower now. "Then maybe that means something." She shook her head faintly. "You don't understand. People notice. They'll talk." "Let them," he said quietly. "They don't know you." She laughed, but it was soft, sad. "They don't need to. The world's very good at assuming things." Her eyes lifted again, and for a heartbeat, they forgot where they were. Just two people caught in the pull of something neither of them had planned. He reached across the table, fingers brushing hers. A touch so small it could have been an accident, yet deliberate enough to make her still. Her gaze dropped to his hand. She didn't move it away. For a brief, fragile second, they sat like that, the world still spinning but quietly. Then she whispered, "You're too young to be this sure about people." He smiled faintly, his thumb brushing the back of her hand before he withdrew it. "Maybe I'm not sure about people," he said softly. "Just you." She looked at him then, really looked, and something in her expression shifted. Not surrender, not yet, but the beginning of it. She stood after a moment, slipping her purse over her shoulder. "You shouldn't wait for me next time," she murmured. He didn't answer. He just watched her leave, the faint scent of jasmine and rain trailing behind. And for the first time, the cafe felt too quiet to bear. The cafe lights were dimmer that evening. Fewer people, softer music, the kind of quiet that invites truths people usually keep buried. He hadn't expected to see her again. Yet when he walked in, she was already there. Same table, same half-empty cup, different expression. She looked tired, not in the physical sense, but the way someone looks when their thoughts have been fighting each other for too long. He stopped beside her, hesitating. "I thought you said I shouldn't wait." Her lips curved faintly, though her eyes stayed on the window. "And yet, here you are." "And here you are," he replied. That earned him a small laugh. Quiet, uncertain, but real. She gestured to the seat across from her, and he sat. For a while, neither said much. The air between them carried more meaning than words could handle. He watched her fingers trace the rim of her cup again, the same nervous motion he'd noticed last time. "Long day?" he asked. She nodded. "Long week. Want to talk about it?" She exhaled, her shoulders softening. "You make it sound easy. Talking." "It is," he said gently, "when it's with the right person." She looked up then, meeting his eyes, that look that always stopped him from pretending it was casual. "You shouldn't say things like that," she whispered. "Why not?" "Because you don't know what they do to me." The words slipped out before she could stop them. For a heartbeat, the sound of the rain outside faded. The clinking cups disappeared. Only her voice lingered, trembling at the edges. He leaned forward, searching her face. "Then tell me," he said softly. "Tell me what they do to you." Her breath caught, and for a long moment she said nothing. Only the faintest smile touched her lips, small, conflicted, beautiful. "They make me forget what's right." He could feel the pulse in his throat. Maybe right isn't always the same as good. Her laugh was quiet, almost a sigh. "You talk like you've never been hurt." He hesitated, gaze lowering. "Maybe that's why I notice when someone else has." Her eyes softened. A silence fell. Not distant this time, but thick with feeling. She reached for her coat, and as she stood, he rose too, instinctively helping her into it. When his fingers brushed her wrist, she froze. The touch was small. A moment, barely there. Yet it said everything words couldn't. Warmth, hesitation, and the ache of wanting something neither could claim. She turned slightly, her voice barely a whisper. "People talk," she said again, softer now, more to herself than to him. "Let them," he murmured, the words trembling at the edge of confession. "They don't see what I see." Her gaze lifted, uncertain but unguarded. And for an instant, she looked ready to say something. But she didn't. She stepped back instead, the sound of her heels against the tile echoing like a heartbeat fading. "Good night," she whispered, without looking back. The bell above the cafe door chimed softly as she disappeared into the rain. He stood there long after she was gone, her warmth still lingering in the air, and realized that sometimes the hardest part of love isn't what's said, but everything left unsaid. A week passed without a word. The rain had stopped, but somehow everything still carried its echo. The glisten of wet streets, the faint smell of earth in the air, the ache of something unfinished. He told himself he'd stop going to the cafe, that waiting made him look foolish. But his feet never listened. Every day, same table. One coffee, one empty chair. Until the 7th day. He left his jacket there, folded neatly on the seat she used to take. Not as a message, not really. More like a quiet offering to the moment that had started it all. The same jacket that had wrapped around her shoulders, that still carried the faintest trace of her perfume. Jasmine, soft and haunting. He walked away, not expecting anything. Just letting go, or at least pretending to. But life, it seemed, wasn't finished with them yet. That evening, as he stepped out into the cooling air, he saw her, standing by the same corner where the streetlights met the drizzle. She was holding the jacket. For a second, he thought he was imagining it. The sight of her there, waiting, her hair loose this time, eyes catching the golden light. She looked different, softer, less guarded. "You forgot this," she said, holding it out with both hands. He blinked, caught between relief and disbelief. "I didn't forget," he said quietly. "Maybe I just hoped you'd find it." That drew the smallest smile from her. The kind that starts shy and ends brave. "You shouldn't do things like that," she murmured. "Why not?" "Because it makes it harder to stay away." He took a slow step closer, stopping just a breath away. "Maybe you don't want to." For a heartbeat, the city faded. Just them, her holding the jacket between them, the space trembling with what they'd been avoiding. She looked down at it, then back at him. "You make everything sound so simple," she said softly. "It is," he replied. "You complicate it by thinking too much." Her laugh was quiet, a little broken. You have no idea how long it's been since someone made me laugh like that. He reached out, slowly, giving her time to stop him. His fingers brushed hers as he took the jacket, the contact electric but gentle. She didn't move away. Instead, her hand lingered. "You shouldn't wait for me," she whispered. "Then stop making me want to." The words left him before he could filter them. Her breath hitched, and for the first time, she didn't fight the silence that followed. Then, slowly, carefully, her hand slipped into his. No grand gesture, no speech, just fingers fitting into fingers like it had been waiting to happen all along. They stood there under the glow of the streetlight, the city moving around them as if time had given them this one small mercy. No promises, no explanations, just the quiet, undeniable truth between them. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "You still want that smile?" He smiled back, eyes soft. "Always." And for the first time, she didn't hold it back. The next time they met, it wasn't planned. Or maybe it was, in the quiet way that hearts find reasons to cross paths again. The sun was beginning to fall behind the city skyline, painting the sky in soft strokes of orange and gold. He was sitting by the Riverside Cafe, that familiar hum of evening chatter wrapping around him like background music to his thoughts. Then he saw her. No rush, no surprise this time. Just a slow, steady awareness, as if some part of him had been expecting her all along. She wore the same cream sweater from the day they met, and over it, his jacket, the one that had carried their story through coffee stains and rain. She smiled when she noticed him looking. Not the polite kind, not the guarded one. A real smile, quiet, certain, touched with something softer than he'd ever seen in her before. "Do you always sit here?" she asked as she approached. "Only when I'm hoping to see you." She chuckled, shaking her head, but she didn't deny it. She sat beside him instead of across, close enough that their shoulders brushed, close enough to share the warmth that neither wanted to name. For a while, they didn't speak. The air was full of sounds that filled the silence perfectly. Water lapping against the edge, distant laughter, the faint song of a street violinist. She sighed, her voice barely above the hum of the city. "I kept thinking about that night, about everything we didn't say." He turned slightly, studying her profile, the way the light touched her cheek, the softness around her eyes. "And what did you decide? That maybe—" She hesitated, smiling to herself. "Maybe it's okay to want something simple, something kind." He nodded slowly. "And this feels simple to you?" She looked at him, really looked, and something in her expression quieted him. "It feels right," she whispered. Her words hung there, fragile and complete all at once. He reached for her hand, the motion so natural it didn't even feel like a choice. Her fingers met his easily, like they'd been waiting for that moment since the first spilled cup of coffee. The silence between them softened, no longer tense, just peaceful, comfortable, real. She leaned into his shoulder, her hair brushing against his neck, carrying that familiar jasmine scent. "You know," she murmured, teasing now, "I think you've gotten quite a lot out of one spilled drink." He laughed quietly. "Best accident I ever caused." She turned her head, looking up at him. The world around them moved on. Lights flickering on across the bridge, people passing by. But for that heartbeat, none of it mattered. "So," he said, voice low, playful, "do I finally get that smile you owe me?" Her lips curved, eyes glowing in the soft twilight. "You already did," she whispered. And for the first time, he realized the story wasn't about what started between them. It was about what stayed. The warmth, the peace, the quiet certainty that not all love needs to be loud to be real. The city lights shimmered on the river's surface, and somewhere in that reflection, their story settled, not as a fleeting spark, but as a gentle, lasting glow.